Hi. It is a widely known and accepted fact that anywhere or everywhere that there's the presence of electricity or electrical energy, there's some degree of danger. This danger poses some dangers to human, even livestock, and to property. So to eliminate this danger or curtail it to the barest minimum, there is therefore the need for some regulation and to some extent standard. And in Ghana, the document that seeks to achieve this objective of ensuring the safety of persons and livestock, and even to some extent their property, is a document called Electrical Wiring Regulation, L.I.2008. Currently, what we have is 2011. And so today, my intention is to walk us through the purpose and an application of the Electrical Wiring Regulation on how it seeks to achieve this objective, which objective is ensuring the safety of life and property. So let me quickly share my screen and then we can proceed. So like I said, my name is Awal Sakib Mohammed. Our agenda for today will be to look at the purpose of the regulation, which is the electrical wiring regulation, and we'll look at the application of the regulation, inspection and testing, who an inspector is, facility certifications, and then we'll look at the summary of our presentation. Now, the purpose of the electrical wiring regulation, which is the L.I.2008 2011, is to establish minimum requirements, procedures, and practices to ensure the enforcement of minimum standards of electrical wiring on premises. That is the purpose of the regulation. And that is A. And then B is to ensure the safety of persons, livestock, and other property from the hazard that arises from the presence, distribution, and use of electrical energy. So the law acknowledges the fact that everywhere that there's a presence of electricity, there's some degree of danger. And so to be able to deal with that danger, the law sets what we call requirements, procedures, and practices. So when we adhere to the requirement, when we work according to the procedures as stated in captured or stated by the law, and then the right practices and all that, we should expect that the law would achieve its ultimate objective of ensuring the safety of life and property. Now, the requirements here means that in Ghana today, it is known or it is a law that you cannot practice electrical installation on premises if you are not certified by the Energy Commission. So that is one of the requirements. And it's also one of the requirements is also that when a certified electrical wiring professional completes his work, that work must be inspected and tested. Now, both persons or both professionals must work according to certain procedure, which procedure is clearly stated in the regulation. So when we adhere to this requirement of the regulation, then the expectation is that the law would have achieved its ultimate objective of what? Ensuring the safety of persons, livestock, and their property. Now, the law in itself also has limitation. The law doesn't cover everything electrical engineering. No, the law has a limitation. The electrical wiring regulation covers what we call low voltage systems. It doesn't extend beyond low voltage system. A low voltage system is defined as any voltage less than 1000 volts AC or 1500 volt DC between conductors. And between conductors here means if you take a measurement of voltage, a line voltage for that matter, between any phase, two phases, between two phases, and you record any voltage not more than 1000 volt AC or 1500 volts, then that voltage is covered under the law. The facility for which you have tested or recorded that voltage falls under the law. And if you measure any voltage between 600 volts AC or 900 volts DC between conductors and earth, it also covers under the law. And basically 600 volts and 900 volts DC between conductors here means that if you measure any voltage between live and a neutral, a phase and a neutral, that voltage is covered by the law. And then 50 volts AC, 120 volt DC ripple free DC, whether between conductors or to conductors and earth, this is also covered by the law. The law also covers an interconnection of an interconnection between two or more buildings on the same premises. So if you have a premises where there are multiple, but more than 2 or 3 buildings on the same premises, now to run or distribute power between these buildings, the law also makes certain requirements to that effect. So if you have such a facility where there are not a lot of buildings and you are required to supply power to various buildings, it's also covered by the law. But this law does not apply to overhead distribution installation located outside the premises. Be careful. The other one the law covers is interconnection between buildings. There are 1, 2, or more buildings, and you are required to distribute power to various blocks or various buildings. It is accepted that you can do it. But then when the distribution network is outside the premises, you cannot. The fact that you are licensed electrician or professional, you cannot use that license to do that. If you want to do that, you need another license and that license is issued by the Electricity Company of Ghana. We call it external electrical contractors license. And this law also does not cover the internal wiring of a manufactured apparatus, which is not wired on site. So if you have any equipment or machine or apparatus that is not wired on site, you cannot apply that electrical regulation to it. The only thing you can do is to apply the regulation on the supply or the system that is, or the supply, the system that has been designed to supply that particular appliance, right, or apparatus. That is covered by the law. But the internal wiring of that appliance, you can't use this. You can't apply the law on that. The law also doesn't apply to a telecommunication appliance, fire alarm, emergency lighting circuit, or equipment which is not fed directly from an electrical distribution network. So if you have any of this equipment that does not take its feed directly from a distribution electricity supply, then it's not covered by the law. But in our case, most of the time, our fire alarm system, our emergency lighting system and all that, it takes their feed from either a consumer unit or a distribution board and all that, right? So the supply to them is covered. So you need to be able to know how to design them, how to size the cables, and how to be able to position them in their right position to be able to achieve the objective. So that is about that. And then the law also doesn't cover an installation in a mine, quarry, mobile offshore facility, and fixed offshore facility, which is provided for under an enactment. So if any of this facility or most of this facility also have a regulation, so as long as they are covered by that regulation, this part of the L.I.2008 doesn't cover. But however, you can find such a facility which has, apart from the mine or the quarry, they have office facilities, right? Maybe they have medical facilities. And those facilities must be wired according to the requirement of the electrical wiring regulation. But it is the mine proper, where maybe the crushing, the mining activity proper is taking place. Those ones are covered by under an enactment. So for those ones, they are not covered by the law. Now, I mentioned earlier that in order for the law to achieve its objective, there's a need for some requirements, some procedures, some practices, and all that. Now, one of the practices or the requirements is that every electrical installation or every completed electrical installation shall be inspected and tested before put into use. So Regulation 9 of the Electrical Wiring Regulation captures this. They shall also apply when any addition or alteration is made to the fixed wiring of any existing installation. So if you have a new installation, before they are put into use, they are expected to be inspected and tested. And then when any addition is made to the fixed wiring of this installation, you are also required to inspect and test. So I will explain that going forward. Now we say precautions shall be taken to avoid danger to persons and damage to property and installed equipment during inspection. So in the course of the inspection and testing, we expect that the person, like I said, will work according to the procedure and practices in order to reduce or to avoid danger to himself or to the property during the course of the inspection and testing. Now, when the inspection and testing is completed, the evidence of that is what? A signed electrical installation certificate. So when the inspector finishes his work, he's expected to issue a signed electrical installation certificate together with schedule of inspection and test results. And this document is to be given to the person ordering for the job. So for instance, if someone invites you, there are times that somebody will invite you to do an inspection and testing for them, but then maybe they are not the owners of the facility. It doesn't mean that when you finish or you complete the work, you must go and look for the owner himself. The person ordering for the work is the one you hand over the document to. But however, you must make sure that the detail that is put in that or is recorded as in the owner of the facility is that of the actual owner, please. So because they may need it, they may need a document for other purposes. If you write the name of the person who invited you, then the document cannot be used for certain purposes later in the future. So please take note of this. So the question is, why inspect and test? Why do we need to inspect and test electrical installation of premises? Regulation 9.1 answers this question. It says the purpose of inspection is to verify that installed equipment is A, appropriately selected and installed in accordance with the standards contained in the schedule, and B, not defective or visibly damaged so as to limit the risk of accident. These are the main reasons why we inspect and test electrical installations. Now, electrical installation must first of all be designed, constructed, inspected, and tested. Now, the designer is an electrical engineer who has the requisite knowledge and expertise to be able to design as per the requirement of the facility. Now, when it is done, the job is given to a constructor who is in this case we expect to be a certified electrical wiring professional. Now, the certified electrical wiring professional is expected to do the installation as per the requirement, as per the design, and then the standards contained in the schedule. Now, when it is done, himself must be able to establish that, or should establish that the wiring that he has done is not defective, so as to limit any danger. So when the inspector comes, the inspector is going to confirm this. He's going to confirm that indeed the wiring has been done has been done appropriately. The wiring that has been done or the equipment that have been installed have been appropriately selected and installed in accordance with the standard, and that they are not defective or they are not visibly defective, so as to limit the risk of accident. Now we say inspection shall always precede testing. Now, before you test, you first of all inspect. If during the inspection you make some observations that require urgent attention or that needs correction, you have to get it corrected before you proceed to test. Now, to inspect and test is key. Now, but then because there are different types of facilities, right? So we also have different categories of inspectors. We have the Certified Electrical Wiring Inspector, which is the CEWI, and then we have the Certified Electrical Wiring Professional Inspector, which is the CEWI. Now, who is a CEWI? Section 3.4.1 of the Electrical Wiring Regulation Guidelines defines this. And it says, a certified electrical wiring inspector is a person who has been examined and certified to inspect, test, audit, and recommend corrective measures on internal electrical wiring of new or existing facilities to ensure their compliance with all the requirements of the electrical wiring regulations. It's supposed to be L.I.2008 2011. Now, the inspector must have a very deep understanding of the law, right? So when he has a deep understanding of the law, we expect that his inspection and testing will be done according to the procedure, and then will ensure that the installation meets the minimum requirements of the law. Now, who is a certified electrical wiring professional? Now, a certified electrical wiring professional is also certified is a CWP, who is also certified to inspect, test, and recommend corrective measures on internal electrical wiring of premises or electricity service connection to ensure its compliance with all the requirements of the electrical wiring regulation. So, just like the CWI, the CWPI also has the ability, must have the knowledge, the understanding to be able to inspect and test electrical wiring of premises so that electricity can be connected. So it is when the CWPI or the CWI says that the building is safe for service application or service connection, that the electricity utility provider is required to proceed with the next phase of their work, which is an inspector, an estimator versus the premises conducts his own physical inspection and then establish quantities that will be required so that the client can be billed for the service application. Now, when the inspector or all the inspectors, when they finish their work, they are required to issue what we call electrical wiring certificate. So regulation 9.5.1 captures this certification process. And so 9.5.1 says an electrical installation certificate shall be prepared and signed by a qualified electrician, duly certified in respect of design, construction, inspection, and testing of new installation, or for an alteration or addition to an existing installation where new circuits have been introduced. So basically, a certificate must be issued for all electrical works, but then this certificate must be issued by a certified person who is competent in that regard. Now, on the wiring certificates, you find that there are various responsibilities. We have responsibility for the designer, we have responsibility for construction, and we have responsibility for inspection and testing. Now, for design, anybody, an electrical engineer, and in some cases, the electrician yourself who did the design, you are the designer. And then the constructor automatically is the certified electrician. And then the inspector is either a CEWI or CWPI. Now, when it comes to the types of electrical installation certification, there are about four types of electrical installation certification. We have what we call the new installation, which is captured. You can find that on this certificate. So you see here, it says new installations, addition to an existing installation, alteration to an existing installation. So all these things are types of electrical certification. So we have new installation, addition to an existing installation, alteration to an existing installation. We have periodic inspection and testing. So these are the types of what kind of electrical certification that we have. So when the building is new, it is expected to be inspected and tested and a certificate issued. So we describe new installations as newly completed facility without electricity connection. If the building doesn't have an electricity connection, it covers or it falls under new installation. Now, addition to an existing installation. There are two types of additions to an existing electrical installation. Now we have the minor works and then we have the so-called major works. And the minor works is an electrical installation or it's an addition that does not extend to the introduction of a new circuit. An example is provision of an extra lighting point, additional socket, etc. Now, when you are required to provide an additional lighting point within a premises, now it is expected that the electrician must have the ability to establish that that addition will not overload the existing system. When he does that, then he can go ahead to do it. Maybe the building was wired without ceiling fans, and then you are required to provide a ceiling fan. You first of all have to ensure that that addition that you are making will not ultimately overload the circuit. When you do that, then you can go ahead to do that. Somebody wants an extension, an extra socket to plug an appliance. Now you must be able to establish that appliance. You must be able to establish the capacity of that appliance so that you don't overload that circuit. So that is basically what we mean. And so for minor works, I'll talk further about that on the kind of certificate that you should require. So when we say major works or just additions or major works are ones that extend to an introduction of a new circuit. An example is provision of an additional or new circuit, air conditioning unit within a premises, or water heater, an AC, an air compressing machine, etc. So the building was wired or the facility didn't have an air conditioning unit, right? Or a point for an air conditioning unit or water heater unit, or there's no compressor within a factory or something, or the HVAC equipment that was installed was smaller, and so they needed to upgrade to a bigger one and all that. These are works that will require introduction of a new circuit, that will require introduction of altering the existing circuit. So when these kind of systems require, they are not major works, and so their certification is different from minor works. So take note, such systems require a certificate different from minor works. So alteration to an existing installation. When a significant change or improvement is made to an existing wiring of an existing premises, we call it an alteration. So remember, we have new installation, we have addition, and we have alteration. Alteration and addition can be different. Alteration may mean that a fully rewiring of the premises or replacement of a consumer unit or improving the lighting, earthing protection of earth electrical resistance of an existing system or providing lighting protection on a building and order or replacement of some fixtures. Let's say the whole fittings within the wiring needs to be replaced for a different type of. These are repairs. These are alteration. These are what we call alteration. Okay, so take note of that. Now, when we say electrical wiring certificate, whether it is a new installation or it's an addition or it's an alteration, this is the certificate that you require. This certificate is not enough. It must come with what we call Form B. It must also come with test schedule, and it must also come with what inspection schedule. It's rather unfortunate that we have not started implementing fully the inspection schedule, but then we have a certain guide that you can use during your inspection, and that can serve as your inspection schedule. Now, when we say minor works, so the minor electrical installation certificate is this. So the minor electrical certificate, every certified electrical professional has one, where one is required to extend a socket, provide an extra lighting point, or install a fan, and order. That or such an installation doesn't require the need for an inspector to come and inspect. And so the electrician must have the competence. So he said a minor work certificate shall be prepared and signed by a competent person with respect to inspection and testing of an installation for which the alteration or addition does not extend to the introduction of a new circuit. So if the additions or the minor works that has been done doesn't require the introduction of a new circuit, then this is the kind of certificate that you are required to issue. But when there's a new circuit, then you are required to issue the certificate, which is the electrical wiring certificate, right? Now, I also mentioned that we have what we call periodic inspection, which we call electrical safety audit. Now, Regulation 9.3 of the electrical wiring regulation captures this. So 9.3.1 says, a periodic inspection and testing of all installations shall be mandatory. Basically, it is mandatory, it is compulsory to regularly inspect and test electrical installations of premises. Now, the frequency of inspection and testing shall be determined by the type of installation, its use, and maintenance schedule and environmental influences. The use and then the kind of maintenance schedule that has been put in place and then the environment for which the system is being used should determine the frequency for inspection and testing. Now, generally, inspection and testing of an installation shall be undertaken according to the following schedule. So even though it must be done based on the maintenance schedule, the environmental conditions and all that, the regulation gives us an idea of the durations or the period that we should be looking or we should be working within. It says 10 years after initial installation and use, every 3 to 5 years after 10 years of initial installation and use, up to 30 years, and then every 2 years after the first 30 years of service. So every electrical installation, depending on the use, the usage, the maintenance schedule, and then the environmental conditions, you can decide to do up to maximum of 10 years. That doesn't mean you can't limit it. If you find that the system is not too robust, even though it meets the minimum requirement, but it is not too robust, the inspector has the right to be able to determine whether it should be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or 10 years. Now, according to the law, after the first initial inspection and testing, the work must be tested every 3 to 5 years again, up to 10 years. Sorry, between 3 to 5 years, after the first 10 years, up to 30 years. So after the first 30 years, the installations is required to be tested and inspected and tested 2 years after the 30 years, up until when it is established that the system is not safe for continued use, then we can, or the inspector can recommend a complete rewiring of such a facility. Now, who is responsible for what? Remember, I mentioned there are different categories of inspectors. We have the CWI, CWPI, and all that. Now, the question is, I've also mentioned that there are different types of electrical certification, right? So who is responsible for what? And this is the contention among inspectors. And I know currently there's a certain conversation ongoing among certified electrical wiring inspectors on the on how long the CWPI certification is going to take. So, but the new guidelines has made the certified electrical wiring professional a permanent thing. So it is not going, we are not fading it out anytime soon. So, but then there will be, it is important that everybody understand this and then be able to work within the limit of their certification. So a CWI can do all kind of electrical wiring certification, from new installation, addition to an existing installation, alteration to an existing installation, and even periodic inspection and testing of an electrical, an electrical installation, what we call electrical safety audit. So if the building is new, before it's put into use, the CWI can inspect and test it and give whatever, certify it, or give some remedial measures to be undertaken. When major additions are undertaken, or when rewiring is taken, or major changes have been made to the existing electrical wiring, for which a certification is required, the CWI can do that. And then what is now happening, the Electric Energy Commission has requested all public buildings, especially, to get their facilities inspected and tested. So this is the sole responsibility of certified electrical wiring inspectors. Now, whilst the certified electrical wiring inspector has this window, the CEWPI is also responsible for inspection and testing for service applications only. A CEWPI is not allowed to inspect and test where major additions have been made. It's also not allowed where rewiring, the facility is rewired, and so there's a need for inspection and testing of such a facility. The CWPR doesn't qualify to do that. The CWPR doesn't qualify to do inspection and testing of existing buildings, which is the electrical safety audit. We know some CWPRs are exposed to a lot of opportunities. So it doesn't mean because you are limited by way of your categorization or your certification, you should allow said jobs to go. When you come across said job, you can partner with a CWI. You can invite a CWI that you know is capable of doing such a work, team up with team. And in the course of the work, you can also learn. That will be a way for you to build your capacity and be able to upgrade later to become a CWI. And so don't do it thinking that you will not be found. You can easily be found, or when an issue arises, you can be found, and then you can be severely penalized. And remember, the Energy Commission has code of conduct for everybody: CWP, CWI, and CWPI. And in that code of conduct, it is a crime to cross carpet. It is a crime for a certified inspector to leave his jurisdiction to another jurisdiction. It's also a crime for a certified electrical wiring inspector to leave his category of certification into another certification. And even the CWPI, another question arises that if you're a CWPI who was a domestic certified CWP before you became a CWI, you cannot do inspection and testing for service application for commercial installations. That is happening a lot. So we must be careful of how we go about things. So if you are a CWPI domestic, you cannot do inspection and testing for commercial installation, and you cannot do for industrial installation. And if you are a domestic person, you can also not do for the industrial installation. This is happening, and I know because the implementation has not catch up. The enforcement has not catch up with you, or the monitoring team are yet to come across that job that you have done. You go to sleep thinking that nothing will happen. I don't pray that you receive a call from the EWP department asking you to bring all your certification and all that. That will be a terrible thing for anybody to bear. So please, let's all limit ourselves to our mandate. Now, in closing, let's look at the summary of what we have looked at. Now, inspection and testing is paramount in ensuring that every electrical installation of a premises are safe and serve their purpose. Period. there are two categories of inspectors, which is the CWPI and then the CEWI. New buildings, addition of alterations must be inspected and tested. Existing buildings must undergo periodic inspection and testing. Now, inspectors must understand their limitation. Inspectors must understand their limitation. If you are a CWPI and you want to be able to do everything that is allowed, then you can as much or as well upgrade to become a CWPI, so that CEWI, so that you can enjoy all the benefit. This is my first video on this. Very soon I'll do some other videos to touch on some aspects of inspection and testing. I encourage you to visit my YouTube channel, subscribe, so that anytime I drop new videos or training videos, you'll become aware of it, or you receive the notification and then be able to join us and learn as much as possible. Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Awal Saki Mohammed, and I thank you.